You feel that? Do you feel that? Oh, shit.
Every time. It's so good every time. Everybody, this your face says it all right now. Yeah, so that was the best version of Down with the Sickness ever created. Anyone is welcome to come on and debate me about that. Everybody, this is Steven from This Saint's Theory, a friendly YouTube channel who I've come into contact with, and we decided we would chat today. Steven, welcome. How are you, man?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you seem to really enjoy that intro music.
I have no idea what to think about it. It's so weird.
I love that video.
I don't know
so
if it was
much.
supposed to hypnotize me or something like that.
Oh, it is supposed to hypnotize you, yeah.
I'm the Mormon here. I'm supposed to do that to you, not the other way around.
No, that video hypnotizes everyone. Yeah, no, well, I am excited to be here. So a little bit about how this came about. I talked to Hayden a couple weeks ago. A lot of people watched that. A lot of people liked that. And then Steven popped up and was like, I want to talk to you. And so we've been planning this for a while. And I'm happy that we're going to actually finally do this. It's going to be in 2 parts, I think, but we don't have a part 2 planned anytime soon. It was pretty hard to even get this one to happen because things are just hard sometimes. But anyway, so you tell us about your YouTube channel. Tell us what inspired you to start it. As you've mentioned already, you're the Mormon here. So like, where are you coming from with your YouTube channel and all of that?
Sure. I mean, I guess it all started back in the pandemic era when I was bored back in 2020, and my mom just suggested I should start a YouTube channel because, I really enjoy learning about deep doctrine, and I had really gone into weird existentialism at that time. So I wanted to, mesh in the two, and along with my love of cinema and anime. So I started that. At first it started off like I wanted to start off super professional, but then it sort of morphed into it was just straight video essays where I would just write the essay and talk over it while editing in a bunch of clips. And I think it's been fun because it's been helping me to read a lot more books, and it's been helping me to grow in my own knowledge of philosophical ideas and in the church and out of the church, and also it's been helping me to improve my editing skills a lot. So there's an interesting evolution on my channel where it starts off pretty normal, and then near the end it gets into some really weird stuff. And
yes,
my mom prefers the normal stuff.
Sorry, I cut you off there. I was going to ask, is there a question that you feel like you based your channel around? Is there an angle that you're trying, like I feel like I'm always trying to answer questions. Like each video is me trying to like put my best idea out there of how I chop something up and live my life. Is there like a common theme in your channel, or like?
I mean, I wouldn't say there's like one super central theme other than sort of introducing existentialism to the Latter-day Saint lifestyle. I've really gone into this stuff with YouTube channels like Wisecrack.
Mm-hmm.
That's what really got me into like understanding existentialism. And I think I really like to try to take an angle like from one of my favorite YouTube channels is called Max Starrett. I'm actually in editing a video for him right now, so that'll be awesome. But his whole thing is where he's just analyzing different things and trying to find like something super profound in literally anything. And that's kind of the approach that I like to take, is I'm looking for that really profound idea that really just shakes me And that's sort of what it's all been about, is searching for that profound idea. Like, and I've been finding it in so many interesting places. Like, I've been finding it with Nietzsche. Like,
Hmm.
for some reason, I'm freaking obsessed with the guy at this point. I've read his Antichrist book and his Thus Spoke Zarathustra book, and I've made videos on those. And I don't know what it is about the guy, but like, he's just a really smart, I guess you could say, atheist. You know, he really understands his stuff. You can tell he really thinks through everything that he's talking about. And as an existentialist, just so many of his ideas have been making me think like there's probably a lot of connections here between Latter-day Saints and existentialism that we tend to overlook. Like, I don't know about you, but like, I mean, your name is Uber Mormon, so I feel like you're super into the Nietzsche too. But like,
Yeah.
the whole Ubermensch idea, I feel like it almost could be an extension of eternal progression or being a child of God in Latter-day Saint theology. And so that's kind of how I connect those two dots. And so that's what I did, what my angle is. I'm connecting dots wherever I see them, and just trying to understand, like, what is this massive truth about the whole universe that we're trying to understand here? Like, is there a God? Is there not a God? And like, what does it mean if there is or isn't? What does it mean if there's a premortal life? What does it mean if there's an afterlife? What does it mean if there is nothing after life? I like to think about all that crazy stuff.
Yeah. I think all the ex-Mormons on my side of the channel are going to be very familiar with those types of questions, because in the struggle to decide if we should stay or remain, that's, you know, what does it mean if there is or isn't a God? What type of life do I have to live now? What is expected of me? What are the rules? All of these questions start to like swarm around our head as we're now confronted with a potential new reality. Or as so I kind of want to go back to this idea of, in your most recent video, you mentioned that you say, not only am I a Latter-day Saint, I'm also an existentialist. Like, I'm not your everyday Latter-day Saint, I'm also an existentialist. And I thought it was interesting that you, what's the way I want to say this? By saying it like that you're kind of acknowledging that you don't see a lot of people like you. There's not a lot of people
really don't.
Who are Mormons who are also existentialists. Because maybe we should do this. What's the definition of existentialism that you're basing yourself off of, and how did you arrive at that? And then maybe we could go to the Mormon thing.
Sure. Well, I explain this a lot in my video, The Mormon Doctrine That Explains Everything. That's sort of my intro to what it means to be an existentialist. It goes all the way back to where I was watching a video and Sartre came up, Jean-Paul Sartre, that one.
Yeah.
The father of modern existentialism, if you will. And his famous quote, "Existence precedes essence." And being a Latter-day Saint, it just gets me thinking, okay, if existence precedes essence, how much of an essence do I have if there's a premortal life, if I've always existed? And so that was the catalyst to where like I really just got into this whole idea where we are like eternally separate entities from God. I feel like the biggest heresy in the church today is believing that God created your personality, or like you in general, where I feel like it's like, maybe we can say that he created our spirit bodies, he created our physical bodies, but our intelligence, our conscience, if you will, has always existed and will continue to exist. And so it's more so we created ourselves rather than God creating us. And so, like, with that idea, we can't ask God, why did you make me this way or that way? Why did you make me gay? Why did you make me straight? Why did you make me white or black? Or why did you give me this disease or that disease? And it sort of all goes back to the idea that you accepted your reality before you came to this earth. the person who you were before decided on who you are now, and it's just been this cause and effect thing where you've been with it every step of the way, if that makes sense. Hello? Am I alone?
I have no idea if we are still live. Can you hear me, Stephen?
I mean, it says live in the top left corner.
All right.
What happened there?
I have no idea. My connection just dropped, which is weird. I do everything from this room, and that's never happened before. But I'll just put something in the comments that skips us to this moment, and it'll be like it never happened. So you were saying that you read, although I think your audio device may have changed.
My audio changed?
Yeah. Could you, let's see, could you go into your settings and see what your mic is?
I mean, from my angle, it sounds like your audio changed.
Oh, you know what? Probably both of them did. Audio. Oh yeah, mine changed. Okay, does that sound better to you?
Yeah, that sounds a lot better. Do I sound better to you?
Yeah, you do. All right, so I'll just put a little thing in the description or the top comment that says there was a connection issue, and I'll skip them to. I should write down this time 13:30.
I think I was able to finish my thought before the connection went out completely.
You read that Jean-Paul Sartre said something like essence or existence precedes essence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Existence precedes essence. So that's the last thing that I heard you say. That's probably the last thing that the audience heard you say. Do you think you could jump back into your brain and tell us what that did to you and why that struck you the way it did?
All right, I'll just start from the beginning. So existence precedes essence. When you really think about that as a Latter-day Saint, you know, we have the doctrine of the premortal life, where we were intelligences, and then God created our spirit bodies, and then our parents created our physical bodies. And it gets me thinking, and so we've always existed. And so how much of an essence do we have if we've always existed? And so I started getting a whole lot more into Jean-Paul Sartre's ideas of radical freedom and how we are just completely free to choose whatever we want to be. Mm-hmm. And because who we are now is what a previous version of ourselves chose to be. In the Latter-day Saint case, it's what a premortal life person chose for us to be. And I feel like there's a lot of implications that we can take in whether or not you believe in the premortal life or not, where you consider how you are just an extension of the universe. You're an extension of your parents, even. How there's been these elements that make up you that have always existed. That you can't completely destroy energy. It just flows in and out of everything. And so it pretty much just confirms that we are eternal. We are already these magnificent beings who have always existed and are radically free to choose whatever path we want to choose.
Interesting. And so that's interesting because Jean-Paul, I never know if it's Sartre or Sartre.
I believe it's pronounced Sartre, yeah.
Yeah, he was French, and I don't speak French, so.
Right.
But
those French people always have weird names.
It's very hard for me to do the French R. It's like in the back of the throat, and I can't do it for some reason. But
I just gave up on that.
Yeah, Sartre. No, it works. It works. So from his perspective, he was answering this previous question of what the Greeks called essentialism,
right?
Which was everything that so in order to be a cup, you have to have certain qualities that make you a cup, and those qualities the Greeks called them the essences. And so the essence of a cup, maybe number one, first and foremost, would be that it holds liquid and that you can drink out of it.
Right.
But if you were to take one of those essences away, it wouldn't be a cup anymore. And so these Greeks, it went into something called telos or teleology, which was essentially human beings have an essence that was with us before, that was given to us, and we brought it with us to Earth. And that essence is what makes us human, and that essence is what drives our telos, would you say? It's what gives our life the purpose. It essentially is a way of saying, in order to know if something is good or not, you need to know what the purpose of that thing is. So a human being, in order to be moral or immoral, you have to have a purpose within you. So the Greeks believed that, we had certain qualities that we were supposed to achieve, or goals or whatever, but they were in our essence. And so Sartre essentially said, no, you come to Earth and you create your purpose. Your existence comes first, not essence. But Sartre was, so the whole reason that I bring all that up, because it's important to mention the context of Sartre, but he was an atheist who thought that so this is what I'm curious about, because there are not very many theist existentialists, because the main tenet of existentialism is what you said, that existence precedes essence.
Right.
And usually that's interpreted to mean that we were nothing, we came from nothing, we came to Earth, we began existing, and then we chose our path and our telos and our journey along the way. Mm-hmm. And we achieved our essence in life. So it's just interesting to hear you bring the pre-mortal life into why you think that Sartre was right. I'm just curious what your thoughts are about that hailstorm of thoughts that I just threw at you.
Oh, definitely. There's also that other example from the Greeks where, like, the essence of the knife is the blade, not the handle.
Yeah.
And well, I think the one part that I would say Sartre got wrong is that although I say essence precedes existence, or the other way around, existence.
It's very
essence.
Easy to say that backwards.
I feel like it's more so they're together. There's no one before the other, and so that's what it means to always exist, is to always have this massive essence. And it's really, you create your own essence from your own existence. You could almost say, from an atheistic perspective, let's say you've always existed, you were just coming in and out of different forms. There really comes to a point where you feel like, yeah, there's this huge disconnect between me and God, where I feel like God's not the person that's directing my purpose in life. I feel like whatever I choose, that's what my purpose is in general. And so whether or not I want to follow God's plan or not, that's entirely up to me. If I want to try to make my own plan, and I almost feel like uh, Bruce R. McConkie alluded to this when he gave a talk called Make Your Own Plan of Salvation. I don't know if that's exactly what he was alluded to. I need to go back and re-listen to that talk. But in essence, I almost feel like that's what I feel like as an existentialist, is that God wants me to be able to create my own plan of salvation. And he's sort of like a guide who is helping me along the way. And just like how when children eventually need to grow up and leave their parents, eventually I need to be able to grow up and leave God, like a bird leaving its nest. Like, it's not like I completely shut him out. Like, I might still talk to him, I might still read my scriptures, but I feel like I really need to grow apart from God to be able to become my own man and to really create my own essence from my existence.
That's a whole bunch of interesting thoughts. I have two questions for you.
Sure. I hope I'm not making things too complicated.
No. We're both average intelligence guys. We can have a talk about this. So my first question is, do you ever see a world where your essence that you're creating for yourself would require you to deviate from the commandments that are explicitly, what's the word here, that are required of you as an active Mormon?
Sure.
Do you yeah.
I almost get into that in one of my videos where I talk about Nephi killing Laban. I know there's a lot of controversy around maybe Nephi shouldn't have killed Laban. Maybe he shouldn't have obeyed God so much. And it, we would usually say, oh, that was just what you did back then. But at the same time, as a Latter-day Saint, we already have this conception that Adam and Eve needed to disobey God in order to fall. They needed to partake of that forbidden fruit of knowledge and gain an understanding for themselves and become gods for themselves. And so that's what separated them from God. That was them, and we talk about how this was all a part of, like, God wanted them to disobey him. And so it almost makes me wonder, are there other moments in our lives where we should have disobeyed God and gone a different path? And I feel like those moments are ones that you really want to contemplate and consider for yourself.
Yeah, no, you bring up an interesting point, because obviously if it's the double bind of the Garden of Eden, if God wanted them to disobey, then does it count as disobedience? Is
right.
I think
he
a
told
fair
them not
question.
to eat the fruit. He
Right.
commanded them not to eat the fruit, and yet it was Eve's intuition, that where she decided, yeah, I need to eat this fruit. We can talk about how the devil tempted her and all that, but really I think it was mainly Eve's choice. The devil couldn't force her to eat the fruit. He could just, hey, Eve, you should go eat the shiny fruit on that tree over there. And she looked at it. She looked at the fruit. She saw that it was good and it would give her wisdom and it would give her knowledge. And so she decided to go ahead and eat the fruit and convince Adam to do likewise.
So you talk about we need to maybe one day we'll grow up and we will leave God, like our
I think that's where I get into a lot of, like, Nietzsche, where like
Yeah.
he talks about how when we kill God in our lives, you know, when we say that God is dead, we sort of allow this crazy chaos to happen in our lives, for one thing. But to quote Nietzsche, you need chaos in order to give birth to a dancing star. We need to be able to, you know, to look at the chaos around us and create order for ourselves apart from God, to become our own gods, to become Ubermensch, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that it's interesting that you say it like that, because I've mentioned this in a few different places at this point, but atheist is an easy way to categorize my frame of reference, but I'm more I'm more what you would call a post-theist, which is
Okay.
kind of like
I
what
can't
you're
say I've
actually
ever heard that term before, but go on.
yeah, so it's kind of what you're describing here. So I think that God is a necessary cultural belief that we need. Um,
I mean,
how do I
it's
want to say
sustained
this?
us for who knows
Yeah,
how many
it gave us the
centuries.
cultural foundations
Yeah.
that we needed to say that. Sorry, my phone just started blowing up for some reason. Um, Airplane mode. So it the belief of God, the belief of all humanity to use God as a superstructure for this is right and wrong. This is the way that we can all kind of get ourselves on the same page and fight towards a common goal. I think that God was a very useful device for that. But I think that as we're becoming, if we can not get too prideful, and we can recognize and be grateful for that structure that we're on, and we don't try and knock it over, I think that we can grow up and get away from God as a society. That's what I think as well. Or maybe not as well, but you know, that's kind of where I see us going. And so when you said we can become birds and we can fly out of the nest, I think yes, as long as we never lose the appreciation for the nest,
Oh,
for the structure that
absolutely.
that gave us.
When you grow up and you leave your parents, you don't lose your appreciation for your parents. You understand that you needed them for a period of time in your life, but eventually you need to grow up and leave the house and try to create meaning for yourself, to create your own purpose.
Yeah. So we have a couple comments. I think some people want to double check some things with you. So Nathan says, and this is when we were talking about, is it maybe there are good times when we should disobey God. So this person, Nathan, says, an angel with a drawn sword commanded Smith to commit adultery with teens. It was a fatal error of obedience for him. Do you think that Joseph Smith should have disobeyed that commandment?
I mean, I feel like that's kind of putting it in a bit in the wrong light. I wouldn't say he committed adultery with teens. We don't actually know if he actually like had sex with other women that he married, considering the fact that he never had children with them. So, and I mean, I'm not saying he didn't. He could have, but you know, there's nothing to suggest that he did. With with so I think maybe we should step back and look at the overall polygamy thing issue to begin with. Should Joseph Smith have disobeyed God to not go off and marry other women? And I almost wonder, maybe, especially with the whole things, especially get complicated with the whole angel with a drawn sword thing. Like, yo, if you don't do this, what I command you, then you're gonna go to hell. I think that's a bit harsh, and I admit I don't know if I totally see God doing that unless it was like a command. He was really testing Joseph Smith or something like that, like really just putting pressure on him in any way that he can. Um, so I don't know if I'm not a historian, so I can't entirely comment on the whole polygamy issue. It's a difficult topic that a lot of people don't like to talk much about, but so I don't know. I can't entirely say whether or not it would have been the right thing to disobey God on that.
Um, yeah, I think the only thing that I maybe want to mention here is how do I want to say this? The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. That's a
Sure.
lot of people, specifically, it seems like atheists or theists or anybody who wants to use that defense will use it when it suits them.
It almost sounds like God of the Gaps.
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember. I think it's Hales. Who's the redheaded guy who talks a lot about polygamy? I'm totally spacing on his name right now. He said something like, Joseph Smith, I don't believe that Joseph Smith had sexual relations with these underage girls because
I don't
there's
believe
no.
Joseph Smith had sexual relations with that woman.
Yeah, thank you, Bill Clinton. But he says because there's no documentation for it, which Brian Hales, that's his name. And I thought that's pretty wild. People usually don't sign
Oh
documents.
yeah, I know him. He's like a big polygamy historian.
Yeah, he's like a big, I would call him not even a historian necessarily, more like just a polygamy apologist. But yeah, and this whole, they didn't have kids. I mean, who knows? You know, it's more likely than not, in my opinion, based on the number of other, I don't even know if I want to take this conversation in this direction, but I think that he probably was having sex with these girls, and I think that he probably shouldn't have. But like you said, there were no children. That's not ironclad proof, but it's also, you know, I don't know if it means anything specifically. Somebody in the chat is referencing, okay, we have more things from Nathan, but then
more stuff about polygamy.
I
honestly, I think I'm the wrong person to ask polygamy questions about. I'm not a polygamous apologist, although I kind of feel like, I don't know, it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, I personally think that it all happened, and I mean, nobody. Here's the thing: nobody ever seems to have a problem saying that Brigham Young probably had sex with all of his wives, who were probably just as young. But for some reason, we have a hard time admitting that Joseph Smith could have been up to the same shenanigans.
Right. I definitely think it's interesting how there's all of a sudden this huge movement of people trying to say that Joseph Smith never was a polygamist, when there's like very clear documentation that of all these people talking about the polygamy commandment, and all these women coming out and talking about it. I don't know, that's an interesting group of people.
Yeah, and I actually think that you'll probably have an interesting take on this one. So this seems like it was a bad long-term strategy. So if Joseph Smith wasn't sleeping with these girls, and I really don't want this conversation to be about this, then that seems like there was no point to marry them, because any sort of financial support that they would have needed could have been taken care of through the church. And so it doesn't make sense to me that Joseph Smith would marry these girls and then not have sex with them, because that seems like the only point of what marriage would be.
I mean, that's
especially when the whole, like, the Mormon population was going downhill, and one of the excuses that I heard growing up was polygamy was a way for God to raise a righteous seed. And so if he wasn't having sex with them, then that seems like it didn't make any sense to marry them in the first place. And if he was having sex with them and God commanded it, then that seems weird. It's just a double bind. I actually want to just back away from this topic, though, Nathan. Sure. I do appreciate the points that you're making here, and I think that they're valid. Let's see. We'll just finish up this last one. And seriously, Nathan, I appreciate you saying all of this and giving your opinion, because it's helpful. He says, my point is LDS leaders have made devastating decisions while claiming to obey God, polygamy, racism, etc. Yeah. And so Stephen, this could actually go to your point, where maybe there are moments where we actually do need to just
disobey
Sure.
and
At the same time, I almost wonder, like, he brought up the racism thing. I assume he's talking about race and the priesthood and all that.
yeah.
From my own understanding, again, I'm not a historian, so don't quote me on this. But from my own understanding, like, there's no official revelation coming out from Brigham Young or anyone else about how we need to separate blacks and the priesthood and blacks in the temple and all that. And so a part of me feels like, yeah, you also got to understand what is being commanded by God and what is human fallibility, kind of an idea. I think Brigham Young was a man of his time who was influenced by these racist ideas that were going around. And there's for some people that's very problematic, but I feel like, because maybe that means that he's not actually a prophet if he's putting out these crazy ideas. But for me, a prophet isn't necessarily one who is, like, I guess, how do I put this? Isn't someone who is always in direct communication with God. I feel like a prophet, you could say, I feel like for me, like, there are prophets of science, there are prophets for religion, there are prophets for music, there are prophets for philosophy, there are prophets for government. And, like, these are just people that are very inspired people that, like, that have established themselves as being very reliable people who still make mistakes, who still slip up, but that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that they're wrong on everything. You still take your word for them. Like if Neil deGrasse Tyson said something unscientific, maybe yeah, he said something unscientific, but that doesn't mean that everything else he says is super unscientific also. And so that's sort of the approach I take. Like, they're going to make these crazy mistakes. They have their free will. They're going to say weird things that you're not going to agree with. They're going to put policies in that you're not going to agree with, but ultimately you just got to look at them as, you follow the prophet not because they're right on everything. You follow the prophet because they just have more experience with this kind of stuff than you do, kind of an idea.
Yeah. So I think that there's this interesting thing that happens. Whenever I talk to people who claim a different epistemology than me, and we haven't even gotten into epistemology yet, but so you mentioned Neil deGrasse Tyson and what would happen if he said something unscientific. I think so. The difference here for me, and tell me what you think about this.
Sure.
So in the case of a prophet whose job is to communicate with God and then talk to the people, you could say that the epistemology there is that God says something and then the prophet reveals it, right? Like,
Sure.
it's just kind of a claim to authority. Whereas the scientific method, or something that Neil deGrasse Tyson would say, or any scientist would say for that matter, if he said something that wasn't scientific, we would then have a method to verify if that thing can be trusted or not. And then we could actually say, on its merits, this thing is wrong, using the process that he used we can follow his footsteps, we can recheck his math, and we can discover that he said something that wasn't true. It's very hard to check the sources or check the math on a prophet, in my opinion, because it's just a one-on-one conversation that he says that he had with God and then is now sharing with all of us. We can't really go back in time and see how that happened. And I'm just curious what you think of that, because since oftentimes I find that people who believe in some sort of God and people who don't, like me, we often assume that the other person is using the same epistemology as us. And so I don't particularly look at any scientist out there and think that he has like the words of truth for me or something. I'm not looking for a prophet figure in my life where people who are raised like I was raised Mormon, right? So I was raised to believe in a prophet and to look for that advice and to take what they say as this is true. Now I just have to work my worldview around it. But if there's no way to verify that what he said actually happened, then it's not really the same comparison. So I'm just curious what you think about that.
Sure. Well, I think there are ways to understand. I mean, Joseph Smith gave a great revelation on this, where he talks about how if an angel appears before you, offer to shake its hand, and if you go to shake the hand and it's, you know, your hand just goes right through it, then you know it's an angel that's just got a spirit. Or if you offer to shake hands with it, but it turns out to be a devil, then the devil will. No, wait, no, sorry, I'm getting this wrong.
The first
I'm
example
mixing
that
it
you
up.
gave is
So
the devil.
the devil, if a devil appears before you, offer to shake his hand, and he'll try to deceive you by shaking your hand, but you'll see there's nothing there. If it's an angel who doesn't have a body, it'll just stand there and say, sorry, I can't shake your hand, because it's not going to try to deceive you. But if it's somebody with a body, you'll reach out, shake the hand, and you'll feel that it's flesh. And I feel like that has so many implications on epistemology, where if there are deceiving spirits, and then there are spirits that are not deceiving, but they're not very useful. They're, you know, the spirits that don't have bodies. And then there are the tangible ones where you can actually reach out and you can feel it and you can grasp the flesh. And that's where you apply the scientific method to, is like there might is you apply the scientific method to the spirit that comes before you, as in you try to shake its hand, and based on the results that you get from it, it'll be tangible, it'll be spiritual, or it'll be deceiving. And so I feel like I've been able to shake hands with a lot of LDS doctrine that I feel like has just had so much implications on my life that is very useful doctrine to me. Like we can talk about so many things, but at the end of the day, all I'm concerned about is whether or not it has benefit for my own personal life. Like I feel like knowing that I feel like the whole idea of eternal progression and, you know, eternal families is such a true doctrine for me, not because, oh, the prophet said it and I should just blindly follow whatever the prophet says. For me, it's a true doctrine, because that's exactly how eternal progression works, is through marriage. It's through creating children, creating your own kingdom, passing down your genes, and by merging your genes with another person's genes, you create a new and greater sort of evolve. You slowly evolve the species that way. You slowly hope that you gain your offspring gain greater intelligence, greater knowledge, and they sort of continue to evolve in that way. Like, and so you could probably throw in a lot of evolution type of stuff with that, where, you know, that's how nature works. It works off of diversity. It works off of, and so that's kind of why marriage is so important, because it's two opposites merging together to create something wholly original. That was probably a bit of a long tangent, but that's sort of what I'm getting at here, is whether or not the doctrine has implication for my life. If it doesn't, I don't care about it. I discard it and I look the other way.
Yeah. Really quick, I want to mention this. Yeah. So as I was getting on today, I saw that Porch Time is live, and I'm sorry, Chris. Hi, Hayden. I'm sorry, Chris. I didn't mean to step on your toes. Didn't know you were going live tonight.
What's Porch Time?
It's a great ex-Mormon channel. They're like there's no way I can describe them. You just got to go check them out. Probably the friendliest, nicest group of guys in the world, and they just get on and chat about whatever seems interesting to them. So I like the way, let's see, we were talking about epistemology, and then you mentioned shake hands with a heavenly messenger. Right. And I want to see if I get the metaphorical language that you're using here, because I assume that you don't mean every time you have a question, you say a prayer and a messenger comes in, you shake their hand or offer to shake their hand.
No, that's not my experience at all.
Right. I've never had that experience either, but you can interact with the teaching, and if it makes your life better, then you're saying that that's how you can test something. Am I
Right.
understanding you properly?
You want to there's a reason why God was so harsh on Oliver Cowdery for not studying. You gotta. It's we talk a lot about in the how you gotta know it in your mind and in your heart. Because if you just know in your heart, then it could be a deceiving spirit. If you just know in your mind, it could also be a deceiving spirit. But if it makes sense in your mind and it feels good in your heart, then that's when you know it's a good thing.
Um, yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from there, because like there's this Kierkegaardian leap of faith sometimes that we have to
Oh,
make
definitely.
when like, here's the thing, right? Atheists don't really believe that there's a God, but like, do the words leap of faith make sense to me, and do I do that all the time? Yes. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
if you're going to try and get a new job, and so you're going to submit a resume, and you're going to go interview, and you're going to go put the work in, like, anything that you do that requires facing an unknown and putting yourself on the brink of, potentially getting embarrassed, potentially failing, I think that is a leap of faith every time, and I think that we do it more in our lives than we sometimes like to think. Now, a lot of people get triggered by the use of the word faith, and they want to think of a different way to say it, especially coming from like people who have left Mormonism and don't really want to associate themselves with those paradigms anymore.
Sure.
And I respect that. But for me, it's easier because people know what I'm talking about if I say, like, there's a leap of faith. And that leap of faith really is testing out these teachings.
Oh,
Right?
definitely. You gotta have faith that you can. When you're a child, you gotta have faith that you can stand up and walk before you can get up and walk, and then that's when the evidence comes forth that you can walk. You gotta have faith that you can do it first, and then you practice and you practice, and then eventually you got it, and then you have your evidence that yeah, you can walk, and that's exactly how the leap of faith is supposed to work. And I think for me, God is the ultimate leap of faith. It's the ultimate. Do I want to believe that I have this divine potential within myself to escape my current situation? Or if you want to look at the long run, does humanity itself have the potential to escape like the heat death or crunch or however the universe is going to go out to like maybe a different universe or something like that? Turn ourselves into gods like Rick, where we can just portal hop to different universes. That's a really interesting show, and I think a leap of faith means for me believing that we have the potential to be able to create technology like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a cool definition. That's definitely not the one I started with, but I'll take it.
Hmm.
I was thinking more of just, if you have to try and fail, and you have
Sure.
to put effort into achieving your goal, then that's you're taking leaps of faith where you don't know what the outcome is going to be, but you're willing to put the effort in, despite not knowing what the outcome will be. I mean, the portal hopping would be very cool, and I'm here for it, but I wasn't quite making it all the way there. So have we even talked about existentialism yet?
I mean, we for me, we've
We
been talking
danced
about
around
it
it.
this whole time. We've been talking about the existentialism this whole time. For me,
Okay.
this
So
it all converges on my ideas that we are free to choose our own paths in life, separate from God. And I think the ultimate path is upwards and outwards to try to achieve the Ubermensch, to try to deify ourselves, and which is really just what Latter-day Saints are all about already.
so let me get this straight. When you say create the Ubermensch, are you thinking that, like, so in the plan of salvation, the goal is that everybody reaches godhood? And do you think that's what the Ubermensch is? Is that how
Oh,
you're interpreting
I
the
mean, I
Ubermensch?
think the Ubermensch is sort of a more atheistic approach to it overall, but I think Nietzsche was definitely going there. I often wonder if, like, I feel like Nietzsche is Joseph Smith if Joseph Smith was an atheist. You know, they have so many different ideas. They grew up in around a Protestant culture, and they were just constantly questioning their Protestant upbringing. And they had this idea that maybe we can transcend our limitations and go beyond somewhere else entirely.
Those are some interesting
And like,
parallels.
I feel
I
like
hadn't
when
thought
Nietzsche
about them
was
before.
writing like his book, The Antichrist, I feel like he was writing that from the perspective from like, yeah, there was this apostasy and the church is really messed up. And like, what's so interesting about the Antichrist is, yeah, it's all about him criticizing Christianity, but it's also like he also praises Jesus for being a free spirit, somebody
Yeah.
who doesn't conform to society and just kind of goes out and makes his own path in life. And
Yeah.
that's for me, that's the ultimate example of being a Christian, is being a free spirit, going out and making your own path in life externally from anything else.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to interpret. I mean, I love it. Nietzsche's so fascinating, man. I feel like we
Oh,
could probably
definitely.
just talk about him because as much as he says Jesus is great, he was a free thinker and a free spirit and all that. He then says, I'm the Antichrist and I'm just as good because I'm also a free thinker, but don't you dare follow me because I
Right.
don't need follow.
Well,
I just love how he's so
he was an antichrist because he wanted to be a free spirit, because he wanted
right.
to deviate from Christ and Christianity overall.
Well, his portrayal of slave morality and Christianity has always been so fascinating to me. I think it's the most intense critique of Christianity that could possibly exist. And it also, in a weird way, is like it is wrong. I think he's wrong.
Really?
Like, yeah, well, so let's go over like slave morality, right? So um there are these upper class. So he wants to redefine. I think this is from Beyond Good and Evil. I don't think this is from the Antichrist, but he says Christianity has co-opted all the traits of weakness and made people think that physical weakness means spiritual strength. And so it's creating a group of people who are weak, they've been told to be humble, and they think that they're humble, but they're just not capable of fighting. They have no like firmness in them. And he says Christianity has created a bunch of slaves. All the lower class people who are doing the worst in society are, what's a good way to say this? They're being duped by the rich and wealthy who aren't following these rules. But what nature actually wants for us is to reproduce and to be strong and to survive. And so what nature would call good is the exact opposite of what Christianity would call good. And so what we need to do is get back to our natural roots of the survival of the fittest, essentially. And essentially what you come across there is just like, hey, the guy with the most power should win always, every time. That's
Right.
Those are the logical extremes of those ideas. And he's probably wrong about that. But it's a devastating critique because it just like, it makes people, here's the thing. It makes people who are being meek, who are exhibiting traits of slave morality, it forces you to look inward and say, am I doing this because I don't have any backbone, or am I doing this because I'm an actual good person?
Right. And I think that's a
And
real question to ask.
that's the real question. And so in a way, that's such a devastating critique because I think so many people realize, oh, I'm being nice because I'm too weak to be mean. But of course, the survival of the fittest thing is where I think Nietzsche goes too far. But it's so interesting.
Right.
I hope that made sense.
Well, I feel like the survival of the fittest thing is a pretty misunderstood concept in general. a lot of people think it does mean the rich and powerful will survive, but more so it has to do with my biology. I remember my biology teacher was all about this. He was LDS, but still had a man crush on Darwin. I don't know how that works, but uh, so anyways, I remember learning in his class he was talking about how survival of the fittest is more so about reproducing. It's survival of you reproduce. I mean, you think
Right.
about the dinosaurs; they were these big, strong uh, creatures, and yet they got wiped out by that meteor, and so they were clearly not the fittest of their time. It, and whoever was the fittest were able to pass down their genes to the next generation. And so if you are passing down your genes to the next generation, that's what makes you fit. He liked to brag about how he married a Peruvian woman, which means, you know, the diverse genes that they merged into their children is going to make their children a lot stronger and a lot fitter to then continue on that line. And so I think that's the interesting idea about it. Um, and I feel like that's another interesting thing that people tend to get wrong about Nietzsche in general. When they talk about his will to power, they think, oh, God is dead, so you might as well just dominate others, you know? But I don't think that's what the will to power is about. The will to power, from what I've understand from my own studies of Nietzsche, simply refers to, you know, basically it's deification, if you will. It's the will to overcome anything, any obstacle in your way, and that doesn't necessarily mean you got to dominate everybody around you to get to where you need to be.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people. I think that's a good explanation of it. I've heard a lot of people from all sorts of different angles say things like, "Oh, well, you know, if you're an atheist and you don't believe in God, then why not just steal? Why not dominate people?
Right.
Why not
And
like
that,
what's holding you back from just doing whatever comes into your mind?" And I always think that's so interesting because it you've heard of Hume's guillotine, right?
I think I've heard it before, but enlighten me.
It's there's you can't derive an ought from an is. It's that whole thing. You can't. I feel like I talk about this in every video or any time. I've talked about this way too much, but a statement of fact about reality doesn't tell you how to then act. It only tells you what is. It doesn't tell you what ought to be. And so whenever people say that, it's like whether there is or isn't a God, it doesn't influence my ought. You know what I mean? There's just as much of a logical jump to say I should take advantage of everyone around me and be a terrible person as there is to say I should take care of those around me and be a good person. Like it's the same jump. There's no
Right.
there's no reason in my head to think that because the character of God is or isn't, that should influence the ought in some way. Because
Right.
even people who think that there is a God, they still have different oughts depending on what they think their God is commanding them, or so on. I'm curious. I want to kind of look through some of these comments because it looks like some of them are interesting. But I
I feel like
also wanted to
I've been
ask.
seeing that a lot recently too. Like a lot of people allow their circumstances to influence how they behave in life. And you look at like somebody like Viktor Frankl, who managed to maintain a positive attitude throughout the Holocaust. And you think, wow, yeah, if you really want to just detach yourself from your external surroundings, whether or not there's a God or not, whether or not there's an afterlife, whether or not you're just in the crappiest situation imaginable, no matter what happens, you still have the freedom to choose how you respond to your circumstances.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people. I think I agree with that about 99%. There's always going to be there. I like to believe that we can control ourselves to a high degree, but I also don't actually know if we can. There's no falsifiability there. Like, I don't know if I'm living the best life that I could be living. I don't know if I have free will. I've only ever lived it this one way, with the circumstances that I was born with the circumstances that every day served me. I don't know if I'm actually making choices or if I just have a narrating side of my brain that's just telling me, just rationalizing things as I go along, as if I'm acting automatically. I would like to think, and I think it's useful to imagine that I have that control, because I think it makes me happier. But it's one of those things that I wonder about all the time, because it's so interesting to just, I don't know, play around with it. Can I prove that I have free will? No. Can I prove that it's useful? No. But it feels useful, That's about as much as I can do with that. So somebody is saying, I think this is directed at me, but you help me figure this out. Read 3rd Nephi and the 4 Gospels side by side. You will find that Jesus Christ of 3rd Nephi is not the same. Focus on the Gospels instead. You will find the Messiah. Wait, I'm confused by this. Does this make sense to you? Oh, there's another one. Okay. So I'll read it as if the sentence continues. You will find that Jesus Christ of 3rd Nephi is not the same. Focus on the Gospels instead. You will find the Messiah. Focus on the BOM, and you will remain in confusion. The pearl of great price is not the Mormon Church, it's Christ himself. Oh, okay. Now I get it. I had to read it like that. So this person, I don't know where this person is coming from. Hello, exempt 1277. Thank you for that.
And then he says, but in these last days has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, through whom also he created the world. So it sounds like exempt 1277 is a Christian.
Is a Christian, not a Mormon. And I don't know who this person is, but okay. So hi, Hayden. I already said hi to you, but hello again. Reptilian humanoid.
Oh man, we got a real conspiracy theorist on our hands.
Yeah.
Here.
Well, we're the real conspiracy theorists.
Wow. Who's to say who's the conspiracy theorist or not, I guess.
Right. No, Tristan, thank you for that. Let's see. So I think Nathan would like to, because Nathan is saying, and I'm not going to open this conversation back up, but he is saying that Brigham Young said something that was like in 1852 about are you interested?
Brigham Young just said so many crazy things.
No, he did say crazy things, and I mean, I don't think he was a prophet, so I don't have a problem saying he did crazy things and was wrong about mostly everything. But Nathan just wanted to get that out of there. He can send a transcript. Nathan, if you're still here, I'm sorry I missed this. Go ahead and send it, or just put it in the comments, because I'm sure that me and Steven will be in and out of the comments for a little bit. But so I feel like we did a decent job. Kind of, I think there's a lot that we actually agree on this whole existentialism thing, coming at it from such different angles.
The more I study these atheist philosophers like Sartre, Camus, Nietzsche, the more I really start to wonder if I am more atheist than I realize. But I mean,
to me, it sounds like you're a post-theist.
I kind of feel like I'm gotten to the point in my life where I sort of think like an atheist when I'm watching some theists, and when I'm watching some atheists, I start to think like a theist. Like I'm constantly thinking of all these objections to everybody. I just want to be like a Socrates who's just going around criticizing everybody's ideas and just poking holes wherever I can. Yeah.
No, I love that. I think, all right, Nathan, thank you. He's going to put a link in the comments. Okay. So everybody who's watching, thank you for watching. Steven, thank you for coming and chatting with me. Does anybody have, so we're going to go in like 2 minutes. Does anybody have any last minute things they want to throw out? I'm sure most of the people who are watching live aren't even caught up to this point, but if you have anything, if anybody wants to try and top reptilian humanoid, I would be stoked
Yes,
hear.
are the prophets actually reptilians? That's what I want to know.
Have you watched? Oh, what's that show on Netflix? It's Oh God, I can't forget it now. No, I'm gonna forget it. There's a show on Netflix. I wish that I could remember what it's called. It's about all the conspiracies happening at once. It's so funny. And now I can't remember it, which is the most embarrassing thing. Hold on. I can't mention something like that and not pull up the goods. So let me just pull this up really quick. I'm sorry, everybody. This is unprofessional. I mean, it's YouTube. It's fine. But of course, what's going to happen as soon as I actually get Netflix pulled up is I'm going to remember what it's called, and it's not going to make a difference anyways. Steven, while I'm ranting and stalling, what's your favorite thing on Netflix?
Right now? Oh,
Yeah, of
mean,
all time.
I always enjoy their anime collections. Like,
Mm.
I love me some Death Note. That's probably my favorite anime of all time. It's basically perfect up until, that one thing happens. Spoilers, but then it kind of goes down a little bit, but it's still pretty good. And it's basically like if Alfred Hitchcock ever made an anime. It gets so freaking suspenseful.
Interesting.
And yeah, I made a video on that, so that's how much I love
Yeah, I saw that one. I've had a bunch of friends tell me to watch Death Note, and I have a hard time with anime for some reason. This show that I was talking about is called Inside Job. It's pretty funny.
Okay.
Give it a shot. Okay, so we got a couple last minute Hail Marys from Tristan. Tristan, Nathan, as soon as I'm about to end this broadcast, you can put it in. No. If you just post it right now, I'll copy it and put it in the comments after. Or if you just want to, it'll be up in like 5 minutes. So Tristan is saying there are no male and female, and there's no male and female. Then they're saying there's no marriage in heaven, and then and then Heather is saying that her kids went through an anime phase and loved Death Note. That wasn't. I was trying to build up to something crazy, and I just clicked on the last comment, and it wasn't crazy at all. But thank you for that, Heather. All right, we're gonna end on that note. Congratulations.
It's really crazy how once you get into anime, it really just takes hold of you. And now I'm just wanting to go to Japan and check out and just immerse myself in it.
Yeah, I got to give it another shot, man. Tristan, yes, it is a cartoon on Netflix. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm going to end this now.
All right. Thanks for having me on. Thanks